Hello and welcome back to LendAPI Academy. My name is Kay and this is episode 2 in our new decision engine series. In this series, we're going to be showcasing our new and improved decision engine in Rule Studio 2.0 and showcasing you, the user, how to create your very own decision logic and lending product utilizing our decision engine. So with that being said, let's get started. In this video, we're going to go and actually leverage our rules and teach you how to create a parent-child tree relationship. So with that, let's get started. In our last video, we left off creating the first auto lending tree for our auto lending and auto financing product. The first tree is looking at our age and our credit check. For this first tree, we're actually also going to be leveraging the credit scores that we're pulling from our TransUnion credit bureau. We have a test account integrated with our TransUnion system. And as a reminder for users that are going to be leveraging third-party data providers, if you look into our integration partners page, we have all of the credit bureaus plus the CRS Tri-Bureau experience here, along with ID verification, banking data, and LMS. Once you have your credentials ready, it's as simple as turning on your credentials for your specific data provider. And once you turn it on, all of the data will be populated in our model studio. For us, we can take a look and just check our TransUnion soft data is coming into our model studio and ready for us to use. And we are using specifically the credit score. The credit score variable here for our first decision tree. So with that, let's create a child tree to this one. So upon calling our product for credit score and age, we want to create a secondary tree to call for some of the financial information that's associated to our specific borrowers. So the first thing we're going to be calling is our employment type. We're going to be calling a employment drop-down variable, which we will then determine if it's unemployed or if the user is a full-time employment. So we created a node here to call the variable that, as long as it does not contain the unemployed field, will be eligible for next steps. And again, as a reminder, to call these variables, you just have to make sure the variable is published in our model studio. So for us, we are leveraging the employment type that we've created in our model studio. And you'll see here we have, this is a list value. So we're asking users to select the specific employment type that pertains to them. In this case, we are utilizing unemployed as the type. And then from there, if the user does select unemployed, it unfortunately takes them out of the running for our loan. So going through back to our tree 272, you'll see the logic here. First, we ask for the employment type. Of course, if you are unemployed, then you are going to be declined. And if you are not unemployed, if you have any of the other fields, full-time employment, part-time employment, or as a contractor, we will then test out your debt-to-income ratio and then determine if you are a potential trigger if you have a higher debt-to-income ratio, or if you have a lower debt-to-income ratio, then we will trigger you to be one of our lowest or lower reviews. So one thing you'll see here is for this decision tree, we have two different nodes. One where we are checking the debt-to-income ratio for users with 25 calculated percentage versus 50 percentage. So the reason for that is if you are someone with a higher debt to income ratio, but you are fully employed, we don't want to kick you out of that funnel altogether. Instead, we're placing you in what we call our review funnel. So, as always, the outcomes decided for our Rule Studio is coming from our decision outcomes meter here. So, in this specific field, when you set up your decision outcomes, when you want to program your decision logic, or even leverage it for your product studio or pricing engine, what you need to do is make sure you have your pre-programmed decision outcomes. Of course, the four variables that we utilize here are approve, decline, review, and request documentation. As always, the approve uh, the approve outcome simply allows users to continue forward without any interruptions in their system, whereas the decline outcome stops the user in their tracks. So, for our instances, of course, in the lending space, there are different nomenclatures here. In the LendAPI ecosystem, when someone is what we call an approved outcome, it does not necessarily mean they are approved for a loan. It simply means that they have sufficed all of the credentials they need to continue forward, and they can continue forward without being stopped or hindered. Whereas a decline outcome simply means that you have to stop, that they met a binary decision that will not allow them to continue forward, in which case we want to stop them in their tracks from continuing perhaps to the next page of an application or to run the next set of rules. This could be something like age, right? For most lenders in America, you can't legally give out loans if the borrower is under the age of 18. That in that instance will usually associate with a decline outcome. Then we have two others, which are review documents, request documents, pardon me, and review. These specific outcomes are actually associated with a what we call a soft review or a soft decline, often used. And what this means is it does not take the user fully out of the funnel. It does not stop them from continuing forward. What it does is it kicks this user to our back office application to be reviewed. So the review outcome stage is mostly utilized for that instance. If you want any sort of manual intervention for this particular step, this is where the user would come and actually set a review outcome associated with that. So, with that being said, we will go back to our Rule Studio, review what actual outcomes are associated. So, you'll see here for the first node of our tree where we ask the user if they are unemployed, we do set a hard outcome of decline in this instance because I do not want someone to proceed if they do not have a source of income coming in. So if they are not, if they are partially employed or part-time or a contractor, we do want them to proceed forward. This is where we come into what we call our softer guidelines in the lending world. The first of which is our debt to income ratio. We are leveraging the first check is if you have a debt to income ratio of over 50, in which case we do put you into what we call our review queue. We don't want to necessarily kick people out of this process altogether if they have a little bit higher DTI. In this instance, I actually do want a user to have a manual set of eyes, checking their DTI, reviewing what's happening there, and seeing if there is perhaps a other way to underwrite them with assets or collateral. And then finally, we have our other set of rules, which is a smaller DTI, which is called at 25%. If you have anything equal that's greater than equal to 25%, or in between 25 to 15, you will get to proceed to the next steps without any hiccups, but you might have a lower rate, or sorry, a higher rate of interest, whereas someone who has lower than 25% will have even a very low rate going through this loan. So this is the checkpoint for our tree. Now, what we want to do is we actually want to run a test for this tree, in which case, just to test the logic is working, So we will put in a unemployed rate here, and we're going to put the monthly expenses at $1,000 and the annual income to be around $100,000. And you'll see for this particular tree, it actually just stops the user at the point of the unemployed route. Now, if we change this to a full-time employment and rerun this tree, it actually leverages this and is approved for the next steps. So you'll see here the calculated debt-to-income ratio for this particular user with a monthly expense of $1,000 and an annual income of $100,000 is actually very low. It's roughly about 10% DTI, which means that they actually qualify, by my logic, the lowest DTI rate. It means that when we do pre-qualify them for this product, they'll probably get a lower interest rate or a higher loan term. And then, of course, if we want to leverage a higher monthly income, let's say $3,000 a month, this user actually does go into what I would say estimating around the 30% range, which means that they do also qualify, but at a higher perhaps interest rate and probably shorter terms. And then finally, if we change this particular instance to, let's say, 5,500, and this user will go into the manual review. This is usually roughly calculated monthly DTI of about 6,000 or 60% by our estimates, in which case this user will most likely fall into a manual review since their monthly expenses are rather high and their annual income can't qualify for that. But again, in this instance, we don't take them out of the funnel. We simply will kick them into the review outcome, which will set them here in our application back office for an analyst or someone to review their specific use case. So with that, it looks like our tree is ready and we've went ahead and published it. So what we're going to do is we're going to tie this tree as a child tree back into our parent tree. And we are going to actually allow these two trees run together. So to tie a child tree, what we call a child tree, back to a parent tree, and allow this to run as one synchronous flow or waterfall, we simply go to the node where the parent tree is qualifying for the next steps, and we select here, instead of an outcome, we select a decision tree to run next. What this means is, if this particular instance, the user has passed the age check and they've passed the credit check, they would be pre-qualified, but we want to set another set of checks to do the financials. And this is what comes into this particular property here. So we don't want to give them a direct outcome in this instance. Instead, what we want to do is we want to run a decision tree to check their unemployment, and then from there give them an outcome associated with that. So with that, this is how you would tie the tree. So after the user reaches this node for a pre-qualify, they will then run the decision tree for lending financials. And because it is under an approved status for the action, it simply means the user will be able to run both, the logic will be able to run both parent tree and child tree without any manual intervention or hiccups there. So with that, this is how you would set together a child tree and parent tree. Now, you might ask yourself why someone would use a child-parent relationship instead of putting all of this in one tree. The simple logic for this is there's a couple different reasons, right? One simple reason is if you are calling, for example, a set of credit bureaus or third-party data, and you want to split up this instance into two different trees, you may not want this full tree to be called until you may not want your child tree to be called until the parent has been fully vetted. So this is the first reason for that. Second is there's a lot of complexity with rules. So, for simple governance and management of the different rules, having a split of child parent tree makes the logic a lot easier. So, if you have a lot of different expressions or logic that's in your underwriting system, leveraging a parent child tree would make that running those logic and maintaining that logic a lot easier. You would have to simply change one branch instead of a whole giant tree in this instance. So, with that, this is why someone would leverage the parent child relationship. So, with that, this concludes our video for today, talking about our parent child trees. Please come back and next time while we explore a little bit more in our new Rules Studio 2.0. And as always, please follow and subscribe to our channel for more content. Thank you.